Alrighty, hey, welcome football fans. This is the first broadcast of 2015. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is NFL Football Talk, which is, of course, an inside sports production. As you know, I do not do the show alone. I only work with the best. So let me go ahead and bring the man in right now. Some of you follow him on Twitter already at Chris L. Sports. None other than Chris Lardieri. Chris, what's happening, man?
Charles, thank you. Happy New Year to you and all the football fans out there. And after tonight's great showing of the college playoff games, though the first of their kind, I think I'm all revved up and ready to go for some NFL playoff action. How about you?
Yeah, most definitely. But you know what? Let's go ahead and since these boys will be, well, some of them hopefully be in the NFL in a couple of years here or whatever. But what did you think? I mean, Florida State just getting whooped. Jameis Winston just looking like absolute, garbage. And then you had kind of a thriller at night. But just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think Marcus Mariota showed why he won the Heisman and why he'll be the likely first pick of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Chicago this spring. Jameis Winston, you know, you can go out there on social media, I won't beat it into the ground, making some references to smoking something and passing it, and then basically getting chewed out by his coach on the sideline, telling he'll put him on the bleeping bench if he doesn't settle down. Guy was a turnover machine, and I really didn't see anything out of him tonight that bodes well for his draft status in the top 2 or 3, I mean, potentially. And I understand the combines and a bunch of other things will be taken into account, but I like to do the eyeball test, what I see on the field, and not that impressed. And I know guy hadn't lost a game before tonight, but, you know, he's going up against a quality team, a high-caliber, fast-paced team, and he's going to see a lot of that in the NFL. So Jameis better do a little improving on his skills and his image if he wants to be a top 5 NFL pick.
Yep, absolutely true. So let's go ahead and get right in it. Let's go from boys to men here and talk a little bit of NFL, and then we're going to get into, of course, it is wild card weekend, 4 big games on tap. Cardinals start off at Carolina. We got the Ravens in Pittsburgh, which will be smash mouth. We got the Bengals trying to win a first game ever on the road in the playoffs in Indianapolis. And then, of course, the big one is the Detroit Lions at Dallas, which will feature Ndamukong Suh, who he has become famous for the stomp now. And in fact, you know, I look at Ndamukong Suh, I could see him, you know, maybe standing at the top of a mountain throwing barrels down on people. You know what I mean?
I like the Donkey Kong reference. Yeah, you know, Michael Strahan probably should have patented that stomp because he could earn some residuals off of Ndamukong Suh again this past weekend in Green Bay. But, you know, while I thought he deserved a suspension, the rules are the rules, and he's technically not a repeat offender. But, you know, another guy heading into free agency and doing things like that, if you're an NFL team, would you spend big money on a guy who just continually seems to find trouble? His talent speaks for itself, and I think it'll be a good thing for the Lions to have him in the lineup Sunday, but utterly ridiculous. This guy just does not learn his lesson.
Yeah, that's true. And you would think, because, you know, especially for him, looking at his history, he's been pretty much a choir boy this year. And then all of a sudden, last game of the season, he just can't resist it. And the last time that he did the stomp was against the Packers as well. Well, let's forget the cheap shots and things, but you remember he stomped on that offensive lineman whose name escapes me at the moment. And this time, I just can't believe, and he's trying to say that his feet were so cold he couldn't tell what was what there, and that's why he stepped back. But here's what we are. We know that athletes are highly tuned. The playing field is flat. If you step on anything that does not feel like flat ground, it has to be another player, right?
Absolutely, and you know what? I've got a dog. I've sometimes accidentally stepped on her. I don't want Pete to be beating down my door. I swear it was an accident. And as soon as I feel my foot step on something, whether it's another human's hand, a dog's paw, whatever, I initially recoil. And the fact that one foot hit and then he continued to stomp on him again with no flinching whatsoever, I don't care how cold it is. Hollow excuse, Mr. Sue, a boy named Sue.
Yeah, and you know, we've all done that before. You step back, you step on something, on someone's foot. Your next step is going to be forward. It's not to put the other foot backwards. into the same spot. So, I mean, the fact that he got fined a hefty amount of $70,000 means to me the NFL knew that he had done that on purpose, but what it came down to is it was a playoff game, and they chickened out. That's what happened. They just chickened out and couldn't just, do I dare say, put their foot down.
Absolutely, and not to beat a dead horse, but something similar happened with a running back in Baltimore named Ray Rice in a 2-game suspension, but I digress. But, yeah, good for the NFL. At least they're $70,000 richer. That hopefully will keep the heat on for another month on Park Avenue.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, they're going to be that internal investigation the NFL was doing where, with Ray Rice tape, that was supposed to be done at the end of October. Now it's supposed to be done by the middle of January. So I'll be anxiously awaiting to see the results of that, as will all of us. Yeah,
somehow I think it'll be pushed back to the middle of February, and it'll probably be released late Friday afternoon heading into President's Day weekend, their usual MO of when to release bad publicity, but yeah.
Okay, and as you know, we're going to go ahead and in just a few minutes here, we're going to pick these games coming up this weekend, this wild card weekend. But you know what? I got to give you your props just to make sure we don't run out of time and forget, because we do the picks of the week every week. And final regular season standings, Chris, he bested me. He was 59-43. I came up at 55-47. So, Mr. Lardieri, you are the man. You proved your worth this season. Talk to me, man.
Charles, thank you for this award. Much like Nick Saban, much like the Denver Broncos last year, it means absolutely nothing to me. If I can continue this through the playoffs and walk away with a belt and earn a big box of nothing, then I will take the accolades. But thank you. It was a great regular season. I couldn't have done it without my crack research team, namely me. But you put up a valiant effort, and given the fact that we both struggled last year to crack 500, I think we both deserve a pat on the back. We did pretty well. We went on a limb on a few games. We had a rough start to the season, but all in all, I'll put our picks up against any of the networks or the four-letter network back in Connecticut. So props to us, Charles.
Yep, absolutely. And then, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, Black Monday just happened. All the coaches that just got released. And one of the things we talked about kind of in before the show came on, kind of when we were doing our little preview, was Rex Ryan. Okay, he's gone out of New York, no longer the Jets coach. They also got rid of John Idzik, the GM, because of his personnel moves. But Rex Ryan, now who is he? Is Rex Ryan the coach who went to the NFC Championship, got his team to the AFC Championship game the first 2 seasons he was there? That second season, remember, with Mark Sanchez at quarterback, first beat Peyton Manning and then beat Tom Brady before losing to the Steelers. Is he that coach, or is he the coach who basically has failed miserably these last 4 seasons? Will the real Rex Ryan please stand up? Yeah, I'm going to have to drop one of our favorite industry jargon phrases of you, body of work. You look at his overall record during his full tenure with the Jets, mediocre record. I know he had 2 nice runs there in the beginning. You can argue he had a better roster, better players, maybe less salary cap issues. Mark Sanchez is on the upswing, etc. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of other teams, and I look at the Carolina Panthers, a team that really got decimated by free agency and injuries, and they've gotten back to the playoffs, albeit with a terrible record in a weak division. But, you basically play the hand you're dealt with, and I think Rex Ryan is an excellent defensive coordinator. You look at his team, and he basically rebuilt it after a lot of veterans departed, and they really that side of the ball really played hard for him again this year. On the offensive side, I don't know if he has zero interest. He has no acumen for offense. He delegates to the offensive coordinator. But I understand that's what head coaches do. They may specialize on one side of the ball over the other. But I just felt like he was a defensive coordinator running a team. And he can point the finger at Tannenbaum and now Idzik for personnel decisions. But you and I both know the coach can lean on a GM or the scouts or whatever for a certain guy they like or a certain position they want. And he's got to bear some of the blame for that as well. So if he thinks he's going to be an NFL head coach, great, good for him. But me personally, I think he'd be better suited as a coordinator.
You look at his dad, Buddy, he was a phenomenal defensive coordinator in Chicago and had his ups and downs in Philly. And I hate to say it, I think he's of the same pedigree. So maybe he'll go into TV for a year and wait it out, as some people are speculating. But as far as I'm concerned, stick to calling the defensive plays. You're really good at it, Rex.
Yeah, that's true. And then, the way they cleaned house, too, in Chicago, getting rid of Mark Trestman, who was supposedly an offensive guru who could come in and get the most out of the very fragile psyche of Jay Cutler. But it turns out Mark Trestman was not the second coming of Sid Gilman. They got rid of him. They got rid of Emery, the GM, also, and they got rid of Aaron Kromer, the offensive coordinator, who actually called out Jay Cutler in the media and then came back and apologized to the team for it.
Yeah, and with Trestman, me personally, I thought that was a head-scratcher of a hire to begin with. That said, I understand why the Bears did it. They needed to pair up an offensive guy with Cutler coming off of Lovie Smith. Now, same thing. He may have been a great offensive coordinator. It may have been Cutler was a head case. Team really was decimated by injuries. But at the same time, when you're a coach, you're somewhat of a CEO, you're somewhat of a public relations person, a psychologist, all rolled into one. It seems to me that he had no control of that locker room and, frankly, no control of his staff. The fact that Kromer shot his mouth off to the media, and there were a number of times where Brandon Marshall was making cryptic remarks to Jay Cutler, he had to go. And you know what? The McCaskies, to their credit, made this move and cleaned house, because traditionally, and I've got some friends and coworkers originally from Chicago, and they've reiterated this to me, they are not ones to fire coaches and pay them to go sit at home for a couple of years. So for them to do this is a big step. So kudos to them. Who they'll get, I don't know. It's going to be an interesting search. Similar to with the Jets, I'm guessing the GM will be hired first, and the GM will hire their candidate to coach the team. But much needed, and I don't know what Jay Cutler's future is in Chicago. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely so. And then the other one was, we all expected it, Mike Smith getting fired from the Falcons. But, the last game, I think he could have I think he'd have saved his job, maybe, had they won that last game at home and made it to the playoffs. But instead, the last game, your job on the line, and your team goes out there in front of their home fans and stinks it up. 34-3 loss to Carolina, and that was it for Smith. We knew that one was coming.
Absolutely, and you're right. Had they won, he probably would have bought himself another year. But the guy really questionable calls with clock management decisions, other issues. At this point, a change is really needed. And you look at Matt Ryan; he's completely regressed from the quarterback that was a play or two away from going to the Super Bowl a few years ago. So, like I say, I've lost my job before. Don't wish that upon anyone, but sometimes change is needed, and I think this is definitely one of those cases.
Yeah, that's true. And then the other one, of course, a couple of days ago, Doug Marrone, the coach of the Buffalo Bills, he had that opt-out clause if the team was changed ownership. He exercised that and decided to get out of a situation where E.J. Manuel had regressed, and then they had Kyle Orton. And then Kyle Orton just retired this week. And then, of course, Jim Harbaugh in 49er land, which was the one that everybody kind of knew was coming, but Harbaugh finally, he actually held the press conference, says he's leaving, and then tick-tock, tick-tick-tick-tick-tick-tick, surprise, he's in Michigan.
Yeah, no surprise at all. I mean, the rumors were out there for well over a year, to the point where it was so out there that no one thought it would actually happen. But what I find interesting is, look, Harbaugh had a great run in San Francisco. Clearly, his players this year either tuned him out or just weren't into his shtick anymore. But what interests me is the owner, York, and the GM, Balke, really butted heads with Harbaugh, and I don't quite understand it. From what I understand, back in the heyday of the 49ers, Eddie DeBartolo, Carmen Policy, Bill Walsh would have their run-ins, but they always worked it out, and they won Super Bowls. There's never going to be complete harmony in any football organization. You're going to be able to handpick everyone, and everyone will get along. It's nature of business. So whoever they pick, they better really like. But I think this is an interesting turning point for an aging team, and they've clearly made Harbaugh the scapegoat. But what's interesting about his decision is does he realize he can't get through to today's modern professional football player, and given all the hijinks off the field with Alden Smith and Ray McDonald, you just flat out get fed up with it and figure, I had success at Stanford, maybe the college game is better suited for me. So a lot of interesting twists and turns in the Bay Area.
Right, and the other thing is that Harbaugh is one of those, he's proven himself both at the college level and the pro level now. So now he's had a taste of that pro football for a few years, so maybe it is better. And in college, you go back, you really have kind of an absolute control over the players. Well, more absolute than the pros, because you can say when they, where they go, what they do, when they have to be in the dorm, whatever they have to do. But in the pros, you're dealing with grown men who have kind of their own lives, so to speak, sad as some of their lives may be.
Yeah, I heard recently in regards to this, I heard a discussion with a former NFL executive who said that essentially Bill Belichick had a great line on this. The difference between college and pro is in the pros you get a heck of a lot more money and a heck of a lot more time, and that can lead to nothing but trouble for some guys. So, like you say, there's a little more control. And I've got to laugh. There was one report that Harbaugh didn't like recruiting. Well, in college, there's enough of a mechanism where you've got the ability to have a staff that goes out and scouts these high school players during football season, because Jim Harbaugh is not going to be out there looking at Friday night high school football games. And ultimately, I think he's like a proverbial CEO. They bring him in for the final meeting, the final pitch. You've got a lot of time to do that in the off season. It's not as much of a grind as the NFL, where it's become a 12-month-a-year job, and you've got union issues with the collective bargaining agreement and how much time you can practice. So maybe he saw the light, and let's face it, it's his alma mater, and it's not the Oakland Raiders.
That's true. And I think they're going to be paying him a lot of is he going to be the highest paid coach in football, I think? If not, it's just by a little bit.
Yeah, I think as of right now, the rumor was he was going to get the 6 for 48, but now it works out to be 5 per year plus incentives, and they get to reevaluate it next year. I think part of that is a little bit strategic, where they didn't want to pay him more than Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, who are making about the same amount. But nevertheless, if he's not, he's going to be here in the near future.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so any final words on the season, do you think, before we get into picking these wild card games this weekend?
I know everyone's on the Seahawks bandwagon heading into the playoffs, and rightfully so. They've got home field. Their defense looks like they're in Super Bowl form like last year, but let's face it, anything can happen. And people forget the Seahawks really struggled with a Saints team that had no business being in the game last year in Seattle. So let's all keep an open mind. Anything can happen. I don't think because the Patriots have home field that they're a shoo-in. I'll tell you this much, though, that the team that I thought could be a potential dark horse to make the Super Bowl really took a hit this week with Le'Veon Bell getting hurt in that Sunday night showdown with the Bengals. So that really complicates things on the AFC side. So I think it's just as wide open as it has been in previous years, and by no means are we going to see a Seahawks-Patriots Super Bowl. Anything can happen. I mean, look at the Panthers now. They look the last 4 weeks like a legitimate playoff team with a sub-500 record. So just crazy twists and turns from week to week.
Yep, definitely. And, that said, let's go ahead and get right into it. Of course, it'll start on Saturday with an early afternoon game, and that will be the Cardinals, who have fought through every conceivable injury, in Carolina to face the 7-8-1 Panthers. Now, when normally you'd have an 11-5 team facing a 7-8-1 team, this would be kind of obvious as to which team is going to be the favorite here and which team should win. But I think with the Cardinals, what we got is a team, they may have finally, capitulated, because this has been a great season. I think Bruce Arians should be the coach of the year no matter what happens this weekend. But you're down to, you lost Darnell Dockett, who anchored the defensive front. You lost John Abraham, one of your best linebackers. Now you're down to your third-string quarterback. The team hasn't scored 18, more than 20 points in the last 6 weeks, and they've lost a couple in a row. Whereas the Panthers, you got Cam Newton, who came into the season, a bad ankle, bad ribs. He's in a rollover car accident, and now finally they've got it together a little bit. They won the last 4, so I'm going with the home team here. I got to say, Panthers are going to win this game, and I I like that defense, but I see them getting tired in probably middle of the third quarter or so, and then you're going to see the Panthers start to roll. So looking at what the Panthers did last week against Atlanta, I like them to come in, in front of their home crowd and take care of business, and without too much difficulty against the Cardinals team.
I completely agree with you on picking the Panthers as well. When you look the last few weeks, they had 2 huge road wins in New Orleans and in Atlanta. The fact that they get to come home and stay in their own homes and not be on the road will also help them. And frankly, as much of a great a story as the Cardinals were, as much as I'd like to see them win, and I agree Bruce Arians should be Coach of the Year, Ryan Lindley might be the worst starting quarterback in the NFL right now. And I'm including Geno Smith in there, too. I think if Geno Smith were starting for the Cardinals, I might actually maybe think about picking them. But Ryan Lindley is that bad, to the point where I'd rather have Geno Smith starting this game. And seems like a nice guy, but this is a guy who, as the experts say, has tunnel vision and keys on receivers, and it's just a interception waiting to happen. So I feel bad. Great story, but the Panthers move along, and that's another good story as far as I'm concerned. Even though they've got that sub 500 record, we've seen 7-9 teams win in the playoffs before.
Yep, absolutely. And then, the evening game is going to be good old smash mouth football, and the team you talked about just recently. And we're going to see the Baltimore Ravens, who, by the skin of their teeth and by the miracles and divine intervention, actually got into the playoffs by squeaking by the Cleveland Browns last weekend, while the Chargers were laying an egg in Kansas City. And then you got the Steelers over there, Le'Veon Bell injured in that last week. We don't know if he's going to play. But also, Haloti Ngata, who served that 4-game suspension for the Ravens, he's going to be back. So here we got an addition on one side and a possible subtraction on the other. How do you see this one?
I think it's going to be a great game. Before the questions about Bell, I thought the Steelers were a no-brainer pick, given the way their offense is clicking and the resurgence on the defensive side of the ball. I've gone back and forth this week. I'm still not sure who else the Steelers are going to audition at running back. There was Ben Tate's name mentioned.
Yeah, he's there already.
Yeah, I don't know if Rashard Mendenhall is coming out of retirement, Rocky Bleier, Jerome Bettis, Walter Abercrombie, but it's an all-hands-on-deck approach now. That said, I just like the way Roethlisberger's throwing the ball. Antonio Brown, despite him pushing off on the go-ahead touchdown last week against Cincinnati, is an unbelievable wide receiver. And I'm picking the Steelers based on the fact that even though the Ravens have played better defensively, I'm just not that keen on what they're doing on the offensive side of the ball. They're coming into the playoffs kind of sputtering on offense. They struggle to be the Browns, and these games are always back and forth slug matches, and I'm just going to pick the home team here.
Yeah, exactly. And, and that's the thing when you talk about could the Steelers make it to the Super Bowl, really it's going to be about, honestly, I think this game is key right here because Bell, if the Steelers get past this weekend, Bell is going to be available for the next game. So really, they've got to suck it up here, and this is going to be an ugly one. I know they took turns, these teams blowing each other out this season. I think the Steelers lost by 20 in Baltimore, and then the Steelers beat them by 20 in Pittsburgh. But normally these games are decided by about 3 points. And, for all the reasons you said as well, I'm going to go ahead and take the Steelers in this game too. Because of the spotty, sputtering Baltimore offense, I think the Steelers may have to open this thing up a little bit because if they don't have the running game, they'll take a few more shots downfield with Antonio Brown. And I like Antonio Brown against the Ravens secondary too. So all due respect to Haloti Ngata back plugging up the middle as well as anyone this side of Vince Wilfork can do, I'm going to go ahead and go Pittsburgh.
Completely agree.
Okay, and next one. Cincinnati Bengals 10-5-1 in Indianapolis to take on the Colts. Earlier this season, the Colts absolutely skunked them when they got them in Indianapolis. We're looking at the Bengals team who, not only does Andy Dalton not play well in big games, but the Bengals in their history have not won a road playoff game. So, this is a tough one here. And plus, A.J. Green, he suffered the concussion. He might not be 100% for the Bengals. That'll affect them. Then on the other side, you got the Colts, who I last saw their running game on a side of a milk carton, I think. So there's that to deal with, and plus you got T.Y. Hilton has had the hamstring issues recently. Reggie Wayne should be okay. Again, I'm going to go with the quarterback thing here. Andrew Luck and the way that he can just sit in there in big games and make things happen. So with this game, I'm going to go ahead and take the hometown Colts over the Bengals. I don't think Dalton will get it done in a big game yet again, just like they lost last week to the Steelers. This week, I think they go in there, they walk out with their heads hung, and Marvin Lewis is going to face a really tough offseason.
Absolutely. For all your reasons, I agree. At the end of the day, I'll take Andrew Luck and a banged-up receiving core over Andy Dalton and a healthy one. And with that said, A.J. Green got his bell rung late in that game, which was too bad because the Bengals were driving and really could have made it interesting down heading into the end of that game Sunday night. But I have zero faith in Andy Dalton in a playoff game. I like the way the Colts play at home. I know they kind of mailed it in the last couple of weeks, particularly against Dallas.
Yeah.
But I think much like last year when they faced a weak quarterback team in the Chiefs, they get into a shootout, I like Luck. If it gets into a low-scoring game, all we need is Luck to make a play, in my opinion, and I'm going Colts as well. And what hopefully will be an entertaining game, but my gut instinct says it might not be the offensive juggernaut we're hoping for.
Yep, so Andrew Luck over Andy Dalton, and we both agree with the Colts in this game. And we got to remember, too, that let's forget A.J. Green getting his bell rung last week. The week before that, did you see that hospital ball that Andy Dalton threw him?
Yeah, I did.
That was terrible.
Absolutely. But you know what, Charles? It's Andy Dalton.
That's true, and he just does what he does. So let's go ahead and get to the marquee game of the weekend for many people, and that is the 11-5 Lions in Big D to take on the 12-4 Cowboys. And I think really it's a case of, we look at that run defense of the Lions, best run defense. Do they focus on, stopping DeMarco Murray? And also the Cowboys, is it about getting DeMarco Murray to run against that big defensive line, or do you go ahead and work on that secondary with Dez Bryant? So talk to me. Go ahead and break this one down for me.
When I heard Sue was going to be suspended, I had to sit there and think and look myself in the mirror and think about my conscience and say, can I really pick the Cowboys this week? And I was prepared to. But now that Sue's back, and I have an issue with it, but I'm here to prognosticate the game, not pass judgment on the NFL's incompetence. So I think that him being back in the lineup is key. Murray has not put up the numbers the last few weeks he should have, or he did throughout the season. Is that a function of his broken hand? I don't know, but if the Cowboys are going to win, they're going to need to have Murray run the ball effectively. And I really like the Lions' defense. They're underrated. They really turned it around this year under Jim Caldwell. And I think that having Sue there really is going to help stuff the run. What does that turn to? That turns to Tony Romo winning a playoff game. And much like Andy Dalton, I don't have a heck of a lot of confidence in it. Yes, Dez Bryant's a phenomenal wide receiver, 16 touchdowns, a great talent. But at the end of the day, I think the Lions shut him down because I don't think Romo has the weapons. Oh, yeah, Jason Witten's a nice tight end, but I don't think he's a game breaker he used to be. And at the end of the day, I like the matchup of the Detroit D against Romo. On the other side of the ball, you've got Matthew Stafford. I don't have a heck of a lot of faith in him, but I think he can make just enough plays to win, in which I think will be a close and hard-fought game. And the every wild card weekend, we've got one upset, and I'm calling my shot with the Lions this week.
All right, and you know what? I'm not a big Cowboys guy either, and I would love to pick the Lions here, but really, I just think that when we look at last week's game, even Detroit. Now I understand beating Green Bay. Green Bay's got a good team, but the way that Detroit kind of fizzled, and I didn't like the way that their offense ran against Green Bay, and Green Bay's defense, it really leaves something to be desired. So I got to go ahead with the Cowboys here, the home crowd. And when you look at two quarterbacks who don't have a great history in the postseason, still I would trust Romo if I had to. I trust Romo over Stafford, so I'm going to go ahead and take the Cowboys in this game at home, because I think if they do stop Murray, I do still like Romo's ability to throw the ball into the Detroit secondary there. So it'll make it, I think they can have that kind of two-pronged attack there. I know that thought of Tony Romo winning a game by throwing the ball just sends chills up and down everyone's spine, but I'm going to go ahead and bank on that. They've got more weapons on offense than do the Detroit Lions, so I'm going to go with that. It'll be a close game, but I like the Cowboys.
I give you a lot of credit, Charles. Last week you had faith in Matt Ryan, and this week you have faith in Tony Romo, and no offense, I hope we have a repeat.
Well, I picked both the Matts last week, so maybe I'm just through picking Matts to win big games in NFL football.
Maybe. It's too bad Matt Barr, he of the great kicking brothers with Chris,
right,
won a game for the New York Giants in the playoffs in San Francisco, because you can't vilify all Matts, Charles. Maybe it's just those particular Matts that play quarterback. I'm not quite sure, but I have no faith in a certain Tony.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll see what you think of Matts. If Detroit wins this game, then we'll be talking next week, and I'm sure that you'll kind of see things my way when it comes to quarterbacks named Matt, be it Matt Castle, Matt Stafford, Matt Ryan, Matt Hasselbeck. Did I leave any of them out?
I've got to think if there are any other
Matt Schaub. Yes.
Oh,
he was a jewel.
Yeah. Well, I got a brother named Matt, so I really don't have the hatred for Matt that you do. But
is your brother a quarterback?
No, but when we played touch football, he was a pretty good one. But there were no championships on the line. But I like your Matt analogy. But I pick the games 1 week at a time, and if Matt goes into Green Bay or Seattle, I'll go out on a limb and say I'm probably not going to pick him, but nothing to do with his first name.
All right. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and wrap things up here. Any final words, Mr. Lardieri?
Yeah, I was looking at the playoff schedule and really made my day when I saw the kind of game that, if you're going to hit a game this week to mow the lawn or take down the Christmas lights, it might be that Carolina-Arizona game. And I think what cinched it for me, if you are in that boat, and I'm a big NFL fan, I don't plan on missing it, but if, say you had to and you had to take one for the team, I think you should miss that game because Mike Tirico and John Gruden are calling it. And Charles, I know you love Gruden so much, and you were so excited to notify me a few weeks ago that he signed a contract extension to stay with ESPN, even though we were hoping he'd go back to the sidelines, not because he's a great coach, but just so we don't have to endure his babbling and fencing for another 4 years or whatever the case is. So, really great news there. And then you've got Al Michaels and Collinsworth, who failed to call the push-off on Antonio Brown this past Saturday night. And then we go to Sunday with Nance and Sims, and I know you're a huge Jim Nance fan, Charles. You don't think he's over-polished at all. And God love Phil Sims, so he'll always hold a warm place in my heart, but I just feel like Jim Nance is bringing him down over the years. And then we've got Joe Buck, the greatest announcer in his eyes, and their whole website's devoted to our lack of love for him, and Troy Aikman calling a Dallas Cowboys game, which, Troy doesn't try to take too many sides, but we know he loves calling a Dallas Cowboy game, and he loves Tony Romo. So, long story short, utilize the mute button, maybe put some music on, pretend you're in a sports bar. And the reason I bring this up is I watched 2 college football playoff games tonight, and while the announcers weren't stellar like Keith Jackson and Brent Musburger were in their heyday, I enjoyed watching the games because the color commentators made good points, and they're both former college quarterbacks, and the play-by-play guys just called the game, and there wasn't a lot of shtick, and there wasn't Mike Pereira interjecting with his bad calls of replay reviews. So it really reminded me of how fun it is to have at least decent announcing with these games. So I leave you here on New Year's Day 2015. My advice to you football fans is utilize that mute button. I think you'll enjoy the games a lot more.
There you go. And that is, of course, the wisdom of Mr. Chris Lardieri. And if you want more, if you like that and you would like wisdom at your fingertips, I'm sure you all have the Twitter app on your smartphone. So follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports. And, of course, you can follow yours truly on Twitter at The Inside Sports. And I'll just let you know, when you talk about the mow the lawn game there with the Cards in Carolina, I'll go ahead and confess I'm going to be doing kind of double duty that day. I will be at Staples Center watching the Los Angeles Kings play against the Nashville Predators, their first game of the year at Staples Center, because I do the double duty and cover NHL as well. So I do love sports. That's what I'll be doing on that day.
I'll tell you what, Charles, I appreciate your dedication. You are a great hockey writer, and you should follow Charles on Twitter as well. He posts all his stuff out there. But that said, if I were lucky enough to score a ticket to that game, I would probably seriously consider going to a nice venue like Staples Center to watch that game as opposed to a Panthers-Cardinals playoff game. But I digress.
All right, everybody. So remember, it's NFL football talk every single week. We'll be back next week and pick the divisional round. So for Mr. Chris Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr., and thank you for watching.